welcome back to another episode of the Women's Health Community Podcast. I'm here with another guest, Corinne. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for spending your Wednesday evening with us. We've never recorded a night episode, so this is a first of many, I anticipate. But I don't know if you've listened to our past episodes. We start the podcast with 4 questions, and the 4th question is different to every single guest. So what is one non-negotiable in your day every single day?
At the moment, I would say
Just bring the mic up.
At the moment, I would say my daily non-negotiable would be embodiment and embodiment practice, whether that is dancing in my teddy bear Ugg boots in my kitchen with earphones on blasting.
Yep.
Or if that is something where I'm, sitting in front of the mirror and doing a sort of like a self-touch thing just to sort of ground myself and feel connected to my body. That's something that I'm doing a lot of these days.
I love that. I've been seeing it all over your Instagram, and we're definitely going to talk about that in this episode. But going into the second question, what is your death row meal?
Oh, easy. Nachos.
Guys, stop. I'm in prep right now, and I said to my husband and my best friend, and I was like, I'm craving nachos.
I love nachos, just cheesy goodness, the chips, the
like
layering.
Sour cream and like chives and like cheese.
Oh, that's so good.
I'm not a meat on my nachos gal.
No,
I am.
But I'm very like particular. I'll do a bed of rice, then I'll do the chips on top, then my Mexican mince, then the cheese, and then my extra toppings.
Like my stomach is growling because that sounds amazing. Okay, 3rd question. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Oh, I had a couple of different ones. When I was very little, I wanted to be a chef because my uncle was a chef, and like he would tell a bunch of different stories around what it was like being in a kitchen, and my nonna was always in the kitchen. But as I got older, it kind of stuck to being a writer. And it kind of relates to what I'm doing now in a different way, in a very different way.
Yeah.
Obviously not writing fiction, but I do spend most of my days writing. So I really wanted to write a book when I was a kid and put a book together. And I think a PhD of 80,000 words is basically a book, right?
Basically a book. Like you could publish it as an ebook.
I can literally publish it at the end.
And you're a published author and a doctor. Dr. Corinne.
Flex.
And then the 4th question that is different for every single guest. This was really easy for me to pick.
Oh, really?
You're a powerlifter.
Yeah.
If you could only ever do a squat, bench, or deadlift for the rest of your life, but you could never, ever, ever, ever do the other 2, which would you pick?
Bench.
Ew.
I love bench right now.
I would pick deadlift.
I hate deadlift. Everyone knows that deadlifts are my nemesis.
Really?
I always drop my 3rd deadlifts. I will own the fact that I always drop my 3rd deadlifts on platform. It's just a routine problem. We're working against it. We're working to try and remedy that. But I love squats. I'm a great squatter, but bench is just fun for me. Like I really enjoy bench, and I've worked so hard on getting bench to feel comfortable and consistent, and I'm loving it.
Okay, so we're going to go on a little tangent. What's your squat, bench, and deadlifts?
My best squat is 177.5. My best bench is 95, and my best deadlift is 170. So comparatively stronger squatter, very much so stronger squatter, but I think the legs kind of attribute to that.
Yeah, they're little.
They're cute. They're little. I'm close to the floor.
They're fun size.
Which they are fun size. I am a pocket rocket.
Yeah.
Just put me up on a shelf. It's great. But yeah, so those are my in training sort of best peaked numbers.
Okay.
On the platform, it's always a little bit different. On the platform, my best total is 422.5, and that's at like 65 body weight.
That's insane.
Thank you.
Guys, if you don't know anything about powerlifting, that is fucking strong.
It's pretty crazy. It does put me as one of the best squatters in Australia, which is pretty nice.
That's a flex.
That's pretty nice.
So, okay, we're 4 minutes into the podcast. We're a doctor, potentially published author, and one of the top squatters in the country. That is
it's pretty nice
really
when you
nice
look
resume.
at that. Yeah, it's pretty nice when you look at it on paper and you're like,
that's me.
cool.
Go me. Go me. I love that. So you mentioned that you're writing an 80,000 word thesis. So I'm currently sitting across from potentially one of the most highly educated people that I potentially will ever speak to in my life, which makes me a little bit nervy.
Oh, please no.
So for everyone who potentially doesn't follow you online, they wouldn't know that you are currently in the process of finishing your PhD. So what is that? Explain a little bit more about that, and then we'll kind of go through what you're submitting and writing and how you're becoming an author and ebooks you're selling and all of these sort of things.
So essentially, I did a very traditional pathway through university. I did the full, 3-year undergrad. I then followed that with an honours degree. If you achieve the right marks to actually jump into the PhD, you can. Otherwise, it's honours degree into a master's and then into a PhD. I was very fortunate that I was able to secure supervisors that were confident in my project. That's part of the, I suppose, requirements of being able to pursue a PhD is you have to find credible, qualified individuals at a university to be able to support you through that process.
Yep.
So I'm writing on the representations of female presenting bodies in popular culture, looking at film and books and really trying to analyse and pinpoint why the female body is presented in the way that it is and how different popular culture sources both resist or perpetuate the expectations we have about women's bodies.
Yeah, I was literally like stalking your Instagram for like an hour today, like going through it. And I'm like, there were so many references to different movies that personally I grew up with that I have never seen before. And I'm just like, it's so interesting actually reading your thoughts out in a post where it was like, there was the one about like Hairspray.
Yes.
And comparing that to like Vogue and things like that. And I was like, it is so wild that you consume it, but you don't think about it in the way that they are actually trying to quote unquote manipulate you to think about a female body in a particular way.
Very much so. When we think about the way in which the female body is understood, it's very socioculturally influenced. So our whole construction of the way that we are is based on an external perception. We don't understand our bodies from the perspective of an internalized sort of vision of ourselves. We don't know what that is. When we look at ourselves and we see ourselves in the mirror, it's all the other noise sort of projected back at us. It's not a true and honest reflection of who we are at the surface.
Yeah, and it's so interesting as well, especially myself growing up as someone who was considered obese and overweight by a GP diagnosis. I was given an obese diagnosis fairly young, I would say. Like I was still quite mid to late high school. And I think to then grow up as then going through university and traveling and all these things as a woman who was quote unquote obese, I think my perception of myself was just so categorized by like, you see an obese woman and you think like Ursula from The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, there's like this strong connection between fatness and monstrosity and ugliness and everything that is unappealing, which is so untrue. And it's just one small characteristic that doesn't make or break your identity either, but it, in the society that we live in, it's formed as like the crux of who we are.
Yeah, and as well, it really bleeds into your confidence. It bleeds into your self-respect. It bleeds into seeking external validations. I think I have spoken about this before on the podcast, but when I was at that point in my life, all my external validation came from guys that I was meeting online. And it was never that I was happy with who I was or I was never proud of who I was and I was just waiting for someone else to give me 5 minutes of their attention. And it was because that I was living and married and I was identifying as something that society told me that I should have been. Whereas like I could have been this quote unquote diagnosed obese woman, but I could have been absolutely thriving. And I look back at that point now in my life and I'm like, I actually wasn't what they were telling me I could have been. It's very interesting.
100%. And this is something that I talk about with my clients all the time because it doesn't matter what your goal is at the end of the day. If you want to focus on weight management or fat loss or even weight gain, you need to come at that goal from a perspective of I respect myself enough to look after myself, whatever that looks like. But if we're coming at that goal from a place of self-deprecation, self-loathing, it's going to turn into this short-term fix and we will then fall down that rabbit hole again of not enjoying our bodies, not thriving in our bodies, not respecting our bodies.
Do you think it's more prevalent in our generation, in more like those current 18 to 35-year-olds? I mean, I guess that's a big age bracket, but I feel like our generation, I mean, I'm 28. Like that, I grew up on the whole less is more. Let's do like 1,200 calories. Let's do
Me too.
Keto. Let's do shake diets. Let's go. I remember I used to go to school with like cucumbers, hummus, and like a leaf salad. That was it. And then I would go home and binge.
Yeah.
So it was like I grew up with this mindset that less is more. I need to skip meals. I need to do all these things and then go on like a 3-day binge.
I think it's difficult to sort of contextualize that, I think something that's really important to remember is that we are a social media generation. So much of what we are exposed to is consumable online, whereas from the 2000s and the sort of heroin chic era, you didn't have that same level of exposure. It was very prevalent through magazines and different types of commercial advertising.
But it wasn't free.
It's not free, and it's not in your face 24/7.
Yeah.
And now we're comparing ourselves to others. We're comparing ourselves to past selves. We're constantly in this sort of self-comparison cycle. And when we think of the statistics that exist, I think it's 90% of young girls in Australia are dissatisfied with their bodies. That's 80% globally.
That's
and
insane.
It breaks me every time I read that statistic or come back to that bit of information. It's like, that's the world that we're living in, and we don't take it seriously enough.
Yeah. And it kind of like, hearing you say that, I've never actually heard that statistic before, but like, it makes me almost feel two kind of ways about being an online coach. Take this as you wish. It makes me feel really dirty in a way that I'm marketing to the masses, in the sense that I am trying to help women, but it makes me feel really gross in the sense that I know that someone's going to buy into me. Does that make sense?
I know exactly what you mean, and it's
like guys, I haven't planned what I'm about to say, but like it's made me feel really strange in the sense of like 90% of women are unhappy with their body. I'm a female only coach. Like, that's a really sad reality to hear. But then the other side of it is like, it makes me really proud to know that I am a coach who genuinely cares about my women as women, and genuinely cares about my clients as a human, not just another person that's paying me every single week. And I think as well, then it also makes me really proud to be a part of an industry where there is so much room for people to help, because there is such a large demand, and remove away from that, like, oh, this coach is doing this coach is doing this. Like, no. There are that many people that we can all help. Like, it does not matter
literally
how many online coaches there are.
Absolutely. And I work with other coaches in the industry as well, and provide more of a specialized source of support in terms of like eating disorder recovery and just preventative measures, particularly when working with anyone who wants to pursue bodybuilding or wants to just take a little bit more of a stricter, disciplined approach, for lack of a better word. But we should be proud at the same time, because we're working in a space that is designed to support women, support people feel content within the skin that they're in. And, you know, obviously there are lots of coaches in the industry. It's a very saturated space, but there are also lots of coaches who are out there doing harm. And if you can sort of at the end of the day say, no one in my team, no one in my community is at detriment, is safe, is well cared for, then you know you're doing the right thing by your people.
100%. And that's not to say that I'm the coach for everyone. And that's not to say that everyone, look, I want to say once or twice a year, there's someone who leaves my coaching that's unhappy with my service, with potentially something that I've said. And that's just part and parcel of any service-based industry. There is not one service-based provider, whether they're a multi-billionaire or they're an online coach who's just starting. There's not one industry where people aren't going to be satisfied with at some point in time. But I can confidently say, regardless of the girls that leave me, I could message them, I could get them on this podcast, whatever, dissatisfied with me. They will never say that I've put them in a unsafe, and I've never not cared about their health or who they are before that. But I get what you're saying. There are definitely coaches out there who don't actually care about that, and it's really sad. It's really
scary.
Sad. Yeah,
it's really scary, because the amount of times I've had girls come to me and they've relayed their past experience, or I even had a client recently who signed on over the past couple of weeks who her non-negotiable from a coach was that she just wanted someone to care about her best interests.
That was me. That was literally what I said. I said the exact same thing to the coach that I'm with now. And I literally said to him, and I was like, I want to be heard. I want to be able to ask you why. And I want to be able to have productive conversations with you where I'm not just a piece of paper that you're filling in a graph for. And I want to actually be able to challenge respectfully what you say. And he's like, cool. Because if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. Like, amazing.
That should be the bare minimum.
Yeah, totally. I get what you're saying. But it's sad. So go back to this girl. She wanted that, and she obviously hadn't had that.
She had not had that. And just to, even within the first week of us starting, she was amazed at the level of communication, the degree of investment. And I'm like, this should be normal. This should be what you expect from working with someone in this industry, is that you are going to be looked after, that you are going to be prioritized. It doesn't matter whether someone has 15 clients or 50 clients. Every single person should matter just the same. You should not be rendered to a number.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, this needs to be a reality check for coaches. It's like, what are you doing this for? Are you generally in it because you want to help people? Or are you in it because you know you've got the demand and you can make X amount of dollars and live this luxurious lifestyle? And it's just like, sis.
Well, I look at the relationship between what I do on a daily basis in my sort of professional career avenue, and then I look at what I'm doing with my PhD, and they're so closely aligned. And I'm like, this is such a passion point for me.
Okay.
And knowing that, you know, people who see me online, even yourself included, can see that from me. And then I have clients come to me who are like, you are literally just as you are. And you are clearly as passionate about body image as you are about food freedom and all of these different things that coincide and interconnect with one another. So I think that is also just a huge point to be proud of as a coach as well.
I mean, I think it's the best compliment as someone who puts themselves out online to be able to receive and be like, you're exactly as you are.
It's the best.
Like, first of all, I've said this a million times. I think I've said this nearly every episode. I have sisters. I have older sisters. I have a husband. My parents follow me online. If I showed up as someone who wasn't myself, they would actually be the first people to call me out and be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, so to have someone then relay and then meet me and then be like, oh my God, you're the same, or like, you're more animated in person, or whatever it is, you're like, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, please. Just respect.
Yeah. But so you were saying that you have had a lot of, like, you've realized that there's a lot of relationships between what you believe within the coaching industry and then within your PhD. Do you want to like kind of touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, on a philosophical level, things get a little bit esoteric very quickly. And
Told you she's the smartest person. I don't even know what that word means.
the amount of times I've had conversations with coaches and we've been like sitting down at like a little table and just having a chat, and they'll just be looking at me and thinking, what the fuck did she just say?
Yeah,
like, what come out of her mouth?
Esoteric.
But yeah, so it's like a lot of what I research on a theoretical level is quite, you know, deep and I suppose complicated. But when you start to look at the reality of, you know, women's bodies and presentations, you can start to pinpoint common threads. And I suppose something that is so pertinent about the relationship between my work academically and then my work professionally is so many people know what to prescribe for body image distress. They know the sort of strategies that support people, but we lack the understanding of the origins of how the fuck did we get there?
Yeah.
Like, why do we feel the way that we do? Where did that come from? So a lot of my work then is centered around the theory, the history, the context. So then when I explain to clients who are coming from a perspective of maybe having had a disordered relationship with food, we can then start to talk about the sort of cultural relationship between your body and the disorder, or the way that we feel, or the way it manifests. And something I say all the time is that, you know, eating disorders and disordered relationships are a cultural sort of manifestation or a cultural disease. The way that we feel about ourselves is solely influenced by the way that we have been, or the way that we have consumed information.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. And I think then that, like you mentioned, did we mention this on the podcast already? That you're looking at the relationship between like social influences and movies and culture and all of that sort of stuff. That literally goes to show that if we're the generation of all of these things, that there was a disconnect between what people were putting out in terms of movies and all of these things, and then what we were consuming.
Very much
Whether
so. Like,
they
we
did
can
it
see
intentionally.
We can see that sort of timeline from films and books that perpetuated this stereotype of woman as thin and passive and docile and, you know, meek and quiet and all of those really dainty princess-like things. And then we see, as, you know, in the 21st century with films like The Substance or Poor Things, we're seeing women really tap into their power.
Yeah.
And that is so invigorating and empowering to watch and see. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people are identifying, because it's not something you notice until you start to analyze it. But it's present.
Yeah.
And the fact that the more that we just start to see that messaging, the more sort of subliminally it just starts to embed within our brain.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking and I'm like, holy shit, like, yeah, this makes so much sense. Like, as definitely someone who has struggled with like eating disorders and binge eating in the past, like, you're like, it's so true. Like, there's always this underlying thing of I'm not good enough. And then there's always also like, you think about all the different things. I used to dance. I used to see a lot of like ballerina movies, and they were all these complete opposite body shapes for me. I've always had bigger legs. I've always been solid. I've always been the bigger quote unquote sister out of the three. And it was just like, it was the opposite to me. So it's like, I've grown up this whole time with this unrealistic expectation of what I should look like, and then couldn't achieve that. So literally ended up self-sabotaging myself to never be able to achieve that. It's so, wow, light bulb. So do you have like a specific movie or reference that comes up a lot for you when you're researching, or is it a year, or is there any like sort of thing that you could pinpoint with that you have multiple times come up?
In terms of films or texts or just things that are really positive sources of female embodiment, I would say if I could recommend any book for anyone to read, it's called Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. It's a fiction short story collection. And it goes through, histories of fatness. It goes through body dysmorphia. It goes through body confidence. So many different layers of relationships and the way in which these women have to wrangle with expectations, but also come out on the other side really confident within themselves. Or I loved watching Poor Things with Emma Stone. Such a
I can't picture
brilliant.
it.
It's a brilliant film. It's very wacky, very artistic.
Okay.
But she is essentially.
I do love Emma Stone.
She's brilliant. She's just great. She does amazing in everything that she does. But in this film, she's essentially a child all over again, and sort of re-exploring the world from the ground up in terms of reinventing herself, what that looks like sexually, what that looks like emotionally. And she contradicts every expectation.
Okay.
And when you watch it, it's hilariously brilliant. It's just body confidence on a screen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm definitely going to go home and watch it tonight. Because we've been trying to find movies to watch. I'm like, babe, I've got a movie. We're watching it.
You're sad.
So people may not know about you that you have also competed in bodybuilding. Do you think that that phase or that era of your life was driven by a poorly, we're going really deep here, poorly emotional state, or was it purely based on wanting to achieve something, or did you find that it did impact your body image, or like, let's touch more into that?
Moving into bodybuilding definitely did not come from a place of I want to test myself and I want to challenge myself. As much as I wish that was the case, I know deep down when I reflect on it in hindsight, that was not true. I was very newly out of a disordered relationship with food. When I was younger, I had lost 10 kilos coming out of high school and was very unhealthily thin. I was 45 kilos, very petite, very small. You could see the shoulder protrusions just jumping out. There was even one instance where I had tried on a dress a few years before, zipped it up, and it fell straight off.
Oh, wow.
Like, it did not. It was the only time that I was ever able to recognize that, okay, something is not okay. I haven't looked after myself. I'm not doing the right thing by myself. And that's when I then decided to start going to the gym. But unfortunately, my logic was, well, if I just build a physique, I'll still build a thin one. It'll still be tight and slender and toned and voluptuous in the right areas, being glutes. But I wasn't looking after myself. I went straight into tracking, and I tracked every single thing I put in my mouth for 3 years with no breaks. I didn't take Christmases. I didn't take birthdays. I did not look after myself. And this was not by anyone's fault. My coaches were amazing, and I will recommend them until the ends of the earth. They were wonderful and really supportive of the goals that I had, but they didn't know the full extent of myself either.
Yeah, and this is, I think, a really underrated or really missed mark. It's like you can now recognize that they didn't know the full story.
No, they did not. And I would never blame them.
Yeah.
Absolutely never. I wasn't giving them the whole truth because I wanted to believe so desperately that I was doing something positive for myself. But after my second attempt at stepping on stage, COVID very delightfully cancelled that, but so be it. It was almost a blessing in disguise because I knew I wasn't meant to do that.
Yeah.
And I then went through this very long-term process of regaining confidence with my eating again and finding a happy medium with food. I gained quite a bit of weight in the aftermath of that because I was not again, like I said, looking after myself. I was under eating quite severely, and I didn't know how to listen to my hunger cues. I didn't know how to respect my needs. So powerlifting became like this source of relief in the months following that. I would never change the sort of trajectory that I had because it taught me so much about myself, about what I needed, and about what other girls in that same position need too. Which is also why I'm such a huge advocate for women who are interested in that sport and that line of pursuit to please look at avenues that teach you how to properly recover and rehabilitate not just your body but also your headspace coming out of and into shows. Because you don't know what you don't know, and most of the time you're masking. So if we can work with someone who actually has the educational backing but support and know-how of what that actually looks like, you can start to pick apart small little habits that start to emerge that no one would otherwise recognize because it's so insidious. It's so just, you know, hides beneath the surface. Yeah.
It's just there, but it's like it's going to pop up
very
every now and then. It's like, on the shoulder. Hello, we're here. Literally. Yeah. No, and as you're saying this, I mean, as someone who did my first show, my first prep was one cancelled by COVID. And then that was also the one that probably was the most emotional, the most traumatic in the sense of the detriment that it did beyond the show. Like that's when I fell into diagnosed binge eating. I mean, I obviously had reflection, definitely had it most of my high school life, but was never diagnosed. So to be then have that period and then, like you said, not have the support beyond that, not have the actual full understanding of what was going on and what these signs and what me scrolling and looking at all of these different foods and writing lists of restaurants down in my phone and doing things, what these small things were adding up to. And I think the more I evolve as a coach, as an athlete, as a woman, I'm noticing these trends and habits. And that's why I say all the time, every time I've reversed and every time I've prepped, it's been better. And I think it's a really big lesson that I will never stop trying to share. It's like bodybuilding isn't the issue.
No, it's not.
And I think people are so quick to blame bodybuilding for the potential eating disorders or dysmorphia or body dysmorphia or all of these things beyond the show, the gut issues, all of these things, they blame bodybuilding. But it's not bodybuilding that's the issue.
You still have to take accountability for your own actions.
100%.
You have to hold yourself to the standard that you have set out. And if that is to pursue a bodybuilding show, then you have to take the necessary steps to support yourself adequately. But I do think that people don't know what that looks like.
That's where I was going. It's not the sport. It's the lack of knowledge that then you don't identify the problems. You don't identify the potential health risks along the way. If you could, the amount of times last year girls ended up in hospital post-show was wild to me. I've never seen that many girls. And I'm like, to me, it's mind-blowing. It's like, did you not realize along the way that something was wrong? Like, pain-wise. I get when you're locked in. But I'm like, I had a lot of pride for these women because they never blamed the sport, and they are competing again. A lot that I do know are stepping back on stage and they have a newfound appreciation for their body and understanding it and all of these things. But I'm just like, it's really nice to see the women who do go through something not blame the sport. And like you said, it isn't their fault. It isn't the sport's fault. It's, can I say the coach's fault?
The coach's fault. Like, they're the ones taking responsibility for you. They have the duty of care.
Yeah.
They should be the ones that are educating you along the way as to what to expect. And if they don't have all the answers, bring someone else in, please. Because it makes things so much easier for the client. And the client is also likely to have a far better time, far more enjoyable process, and also want to come back and compete again.
Yep.
But it's also not for everybody.
No.
And we know that. And I know that you've spoken about how you're only competing for a very specific purpose.
Yeah.
And it's one type of show, one style of,
one category. I'm competing in transformation. I don't care about competing at the Olympia. I don't care about being a pro athlete. Not my path.
Yeah.
And people may have anger towards that. People may think that I'm the person that's ruining the sport, whatever that is. But that's my decision. I'm not hurting anyone else in the process of doing that. And I'm like, I will stand by that, and I will be like, hand on heart, know exactly why I'm doing these shows and why I want to compete one more time. And I've got respect for girls that want to aim for the Olympia. And I can pretty much say that just as much an athlete as potentially I am, in even though some people refuse to admit that, but like,
Well, that's just rude.
they're just rude. But like you said, like I know my reasoning, and someone else may know their reasoning, and no two people need to have the same reasoning.
Exactly. Yeah.
So coming out of your bodybuilding phase, do you feel like it was a long pathway for you to be able to then repair your body image, or did you have people address like potentially like this is not like something's wrong, or like what was that like beyond competing for you?
After competing, I'm really grateful for what it taught me about nutrition. It educated me around what was safe, what was accessible, because prior to learning how to track, learning what was in, food, reading nutrition labels, I thought that I couldn't have XYZ.
Yep.
Tracking allowed me to realize that those foods are safe. That we can actually have those foods very readily, accessibly within the diet. The problem for me was that I took that to the extreme, and it became that I could only have those things under very specific circumstances. Everything was heavily regulated, and there were rules around what I could and could not have. I would ignore my hunger. I would reject the sensations that I was experiencing. Or if I was hungry, I would enjoy that feeling too much. Or on the flip side of that, want to get rid of it straight away.
Yep.
There was no happy to sit in hunger, and there was no happy to sit in fullness.
Yep.
I couldn't sit in the middle. Everything was either at one end or the other. So coming out of that, I did end up working with a nutritionist who sort of helped me to learn a little bit more about the intuitive eating side of things, or the sort of mindful practices around eating. I'm not a huge advocate for intuitive eating for people who don't know anything about nutrition, because frankly,
what are they being
intuitive about?
Agreed.
I'm a huge advocate for normal eating, in the sense of almost going back to the way that you might have eaten in childhood, depending on the context. And again, relearning how to actually facilitate those hunger cues and tap into what your body is genuinely telling you. But it takes a lot of time to practice those things. So I'm grateful for the education that bodybuilding and that avenue taught me. But then moving into and moving away from that, it was, okay, well, now I need to learn what it means to eat in abundance, what it means to have flexibility and opportunity. I wouldn't even go to eat out if it wasn't at Nando's or grilled or anything that was trackable. I had missed out on so much, my fault, but I had missed out on so much, and I wanted to explore what that meant. And sometimes that meant overfilling and feeling overfull, and not necessarily knowing how to respond to my own signals. And it's taken time, but now I'm that person who can confidently put my cutlery down on the plate and say, I'm done, rather than have to eat my whole plate.
Yep.
Because you kind of end up falling into this trap of, well, coming out of a show or coming out of a prep phase, or even a very strict dieting phase, it's almost like you want everything all at once. Everything that's there, you're like, I'll have it now because I'm not going to get a chance to have it again. But when you start to flip that script and realize that everything is there in abundance for you, you can have the flexibility, you can have the rigidity if you want it. We can place those healthy boundaries, but you can have the chocolate too. Like there's a lot of space within your dietary routine to actually have that flexibility. But we're the ones that are telling ourselves that we can't. No one else is telling us that. It's our own internal script.
Yeah. I've literally had these conversations so many times this week alone. Like, it's Wednesday as we're recording this. I've had this conversation so many times with women around chocolate. They're like, oh, like I'm really upset with myself this week because I just keep eating so much chocolate at night. I'm like, okay, if you're wanting chocolate, like I said to them, why can't we put that in a part of your plan?
Literally.
Why can't we include that? I said, do you feel like you're lacking the control to be able to have X amount and then walk away? Or do you feel like because you don't have it, you have to have it all and hide it and be like shameful about it? And I'm like, as soon as I pitched it to them, be like, I mean, I'm in a prep at the moment. I have chocolate every day. I have chocolate on my oats every single day, and I have absolutely zero guilt about it. It is the best part of my day. It is the best meal of my day. But I'm just like, we have told ourselves that there are these good and bad things, and then these good and bad foods, and these good and bad restaurants, and these good and bad drinks, and all of these things. And it's like, who created that rule? We did. So why can't we be the ones to then rewrite it and rewrite that script that we can have these things that we want? I mean, within moderation, sure. Like, I'm not going to go and have 1,000-calorie drink from Starbucks every bloody day. But I'm like, while I'm in America, I will have one
Yes.
and feel disgusting after it because they are foul. But I like to try
Your
new
tummy will
things.
not be happy with you,
all
but
that dairy and all that cream, absolutely not.
your brain will be happy for 30 minutes.
5. But like, it's like I'm allowed to. And I think as well, once we really strip back this good and bad and this can and can't and we're not allowed, it's like, you're an adult. I get you can't let your kids have ice cream for every meal of the day. Sure, they need the nutrition. But you are an adult who is allowed to have chocolate. You are an adult who is allowed to eat ice cream, who is allowed to go out, who is allowed to have a glass of wine. And if you have people around you who are consistently telling you or like judging you for doing that or commenting on that, I'm just like, I mean, these are conversations that I've been having this week. And I'm just, it still mind blows me that people don't understand that and don't understand that you can have these things. It's just, the reason you can't or you think you can't is because you have the lack of self-control and the lack of awareness around the specific food.
But then where does that lack of self-control comes from? It comes from a complete lack of giving ourselves the leniency to have the things that we want to have.
Yep.
So it's like we're wrapping it around, okay, well, I don't have self-control, I don't have willpower, I don't have this and that. Well, if you actually allowed it to be present in the first place, you wouldn't even blame those things. They wouldn't even be within your vocabulary. You wouldn't worry about it at all. Like I have a client who, when we started, she had a real hang up around chocolate. I told her to go and buy about 10 blocks of chocolate and leave them in different parts of a house.
Yep.
Put a bit of pot plant. I don't care. Have it around you, because the likelihood is that you have desperately avoided buying the thing that scares you because you think, I can't do it. You're creating that narrative. That's your language. But if it's in your vicinity, if it's in your kitchen cupboard, if it's by your bedside, it's in abundance and it's there if you want it. But it's about learning whether we want something or we need it or what need it's trying to serve. What is the purpose behind what we're doing? And then we can start to sort of tease it out and realize and learn, okay, what do I want to get out of this?
Yeah. And I think as well, as someone who has experienced that whole like indulgence side of like the food, like I need to have it all. That was me with Tim Tams. I remember once I ate 3 packets of Tim Tams in a day. And then my husband came home and was like, where'd they go? I'm like, oh, we didn't buy them. I was trying to gaslight this poor guy. Tim Tams are his favorite food. But it literally took us a year of never buying a Tim Tam again. Like, we had to obviously have a very open conversation. We didn't buy Tim Tams again. And then now it's like, they can be in my house all the time and I don't touch them. Same thing with Wheat Bigs. I went through a phase where I was just obsessed with Wheat Bigs. The crunch.
Wouldn't have picked that.
Really strange. Like, this was part like when I was going through like my whole binge strange cycle. Things don't make sense when you're in that phase. And I think it's just like what it is, and what you hyperfixate on is what you're going to gravitate towards. For me, it was Wheat Bix. I can tell you confidently now, there is never a time when Wheat Bix aren't in my pantry. The box is still currently full. And I think if someone is potentially going through that right now, listening to this, and you are the person that is so hyperfixated on a food and you can't have that trust within yourself, actually doing the deeper work and getting the help needed, it will be broken. That cycle will 100%. Be broken, and it's not going to be a forever thing. And I think if you are potentially someone who doesn't identify as someone who has an eating disorder, is that what we're calling it?
I mean, you can have an eating disorder that's diagnosed, and you can have disordered eating. And I think most women have a disordered relationship with their body or with food.
Yep. So if you're a woman who potentially doesn't identify someone who has a disordered eating with food or with their body, but then you're noticing that you're saying, oh, I can't have this and I can't have that, ask yourself why. Really do the work deeper to actually try and find out like where you're at with food and where you're at with your body. Could you go tonight right now while you're listening to this, unexpectedly go out and have a meal? Could you do that? It's like, are you allowed to do that? And I think so many would be like, oh, no, I can't. It's like,
I wish people thought about their language more, because that stuff that we then start to say on repeat to ourselves really sticks. Like if we say, I can't, I shouldn't, I won't, I'm not allowed, all of those things start to sort of materialize within our brains, within our psyches, and we latch onto those things. And a thought then turns into a fact, and it turns into something that becomes a rule. When it doesn't need to be that in the first place.
There's a difference between not wanting something and you're not allowed to do something. You cannot want to go out for a meal. You, for whatever reason, financial, you want to achieve a goal, whatever, you're allowed to not want to do something, but you're always allowed. Did that make sense? You're not. Yeah.
You don't have to want to do something. Wait.
Yeah, what? We've just
Hold on.
confused our-
You don't you don't have to do something just because you feel like you should, because, you know, something that's popped up a lot within the narrative of like food freedom is that go and have the chocolate or go and have the cookie. If you don't want it, don't have it. You don't have to feed into that narrative if that's not what you actually want. But ask yourself the question. Genuinely ask yourself out loud. Because a lot of the time when I tell people, ask yourself, they'll be like, oh, whatever. What do you mean? Like, sure. But they don't actually ask themselves what they want in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, do you want sugar? Do you want a cookie specifically? Do you want comfort? Are you bored? Like, what do you actually need in this moment? What will satisfy you truly?
What was a really big moment for you to realize that so many women actually lacked that like connection between their brain and then their like actions?
I mean, over the years with coaching, and I think particularly when I first started coaching, I noticed that the advice that I would give was also not something that I would carry out myself because I was in the middle of prep. So I was not practicing what I would preach, but I was noticing so many girls were also embodying the same habits that I had built and retained over those years of prepping. And I was like, oh, okay, this is telling me a lot about the way that I want to coach, about the values that I have as a person. And I say that my clients at the time saved me from an experience that wasn't meant for me. It just was not meant for me. And learning that, you know, food could be something that is safe and secure and, you know, cultural and experiential and all these different things rather than just food, fuel, or a means to an end. And that was something that I was conveying to my clients constantly because they were also in that same place, following that same pattern. I think that was a huge turning point for me. Yeah.
It's really interesting. You're so right. Like, it's like clients will emulate knowingly or unknowingly what their coach is doing.
Yeah.
And whether they are wanting to achieve the same goals or not, some coaches don't actually recognize that. And I'm very big on my goals are my goals. My goals are not my clients' goals. I will encourage my clients to go and have a quote unquote a free meal a couple nights a week. If that's something that they value within their relationship, within their family, with their children, I encourage that. Personally, I can't go and do that, but that doesn't mean that because I can't, they shouldn't.
That also doesn't mean that those goals will be your goals forever.
No.
Yeah.
When I'm not in prep, whoo-hoo.
She's going to enjoy herself.
I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
I am an absolute foodie. But like I said, like it's also the phase of life that I'm in. It's not the phase of life that everyone around me has to be. And my husband still eats out multiple times a week. He Uber eats his lunch today.
Yeah, you're not going to judge him for that.
I mean, I'm jealous. I'm not going to judge him, but I'm jealous.
You want to partake.
There's going to be a day like, babe, just order 2.
Just one extra chip.
For me. But like, it's really nice to hear that you recognized it very early within your coaching that was something that was going on. Was that always then what you were planning to study your PhD in?
I didn't intend to hyperfixate on bodies. That wasn't my automatic decision. I had done, during my undergrad, my honours degree more specifically, I had looked at the more theoretical side and sort of philosophy around different body presentations. And during my PhD, I was like, okay, well, how do I niche this down? How do I narrow this? What is important to me? Because something that you have to consistently come back to within the PhD is, what do you want your impact to be? What is important to you long term? What do you want to say to the broader population? And niching it down and narrowing onto women's bodies, female presenting bodies, people who are considered other than the norm, which is the way that women are actually considered within traditional definitions of what it means to be human. That became a strong passion point for me and something that I wanted to extend and elaborate on and sort of move down that trajectory.
What's been one of the most interesting things that you've like found or like that you've written or something that you think would really shock people to understand throughout like it's probably a really loaded question. Hey.
There's so much in that. I think one of my favorite sayings now or snippets from text is a particular philosopher said that we are not one and the same, but we're in this together. And that summarizes for me perfectly the relationship that women have with other women, but also the relationship that we have with each other and each other's bodies. We're not all the same. We're all on different paths and different trajectories, but we all deserve to empower each other the same way. Yeah. And that's obviously me interpreting it in a very different context, but that's the way that a lot of the time you read texts and you read, snippets of very eloquent language, and you're like, that resonates in so many different ways. And that's something that I want to carry through, not just in my academic work, but in the work that I do, on a daily basis.
Yeah. And then what would be one of the most shocking things that you've discovered?
Oh, there's so many wacky things around, I think that the one that hits me all the time is that Aristotle said that women are botched men.
Oh.
That we're just malformed amalgamations of the male body, and we shouldn't even be here.
I mean, good luck him being here without us being here.
I know, excuse me. You are literally in debt to us. You would not be here without us. Thank you very much.
Calling probably one of the most famous philosophers an idiot, but
there were things that have been said historically, and you look at it and you're like, that makes no sense. Or any of the dialogue around fatness and what was believed to be healthy versus unhealthy, and the historical rhetoric around, if you were in a thin body at one period of time, you were an infertile representation of disease, versus look at where we are now, or even, in the late 19th century, someone who was a thin body then represented culture. They represented sexiness. They represented everything that was desirable, and that still persists. And that is a standard that since has not changed.
Right,
when we look at the sort of history of how the body has been perceived over time, fat bodies used to be the most desired. They were voluptuous. They were a sign of fertility. They were the pinnacle of health and wealth.
They were a sign of wealth,
exactly. Yeah. And then over time, through the way that the world just evolved, and there's a whole narrative as to why that literally occurred. But now we have a standard that has stuck, that to be thin is to be wanted, to be thin is to be smarter, to be thin is to be everything good about a woman, which is so wrong. It means nothing.
Me, I'm just like, yep, keep talking, because I'm nodding.
Yeah.
My Botox just kicked in, but I'm raising my eyebrows.
I can't see the raised eyebrows, but
they're raised.
They're raised.
I got to have really expressive eyes. But it's so true that what you were just saying, once upon a time, if you look at I don't even know when it was, but I went to this exhibition in Colombia, an art gallery. Ooh. And I went by myself, spent the day there, and the whole exhibition was this really famous sculptural guy. How do you say that? Sculptural artist, made sculptures.
Yes.
Yep.
Sculptor.
That's the one. His whole thing was of this royal queen who was this really overweight woman, really overweight, and the way that they depicted her, she had really small legs, but she was large.
Yeah.
And that she was once in her timeline was the most beautiful woman in the world. And now you could Google the most beautiful woman in the world now, and I'm like, who's coming up? Who do we think is coming up? I don't know, some tiny Victoria's Secret model.
Probably a Victoria's Secret model.
She's a minority. It's it's true. It's we have, especially now with the generation where social media is in our faces and what's celebrated and who has the most followers online or all of these things, it's not the general woman.
You'll even see people start to compare themselves to, I'm not stereotypically beautiful, or I'm not the conventional understanding of beauty, whatever that means. We know what that means. It's if you're white and blonde or brunette or have a petite waist and wider hips. These are structural things that people can't change, but we've created this understanding of what it means to be beautiful, and we've constructed it in the sense of there's no deviance from that. You can't move away from that one singular perspective, when we know that beauty doesn't have a definition. We know that to be confident in ourselves doesn't require us to fit and be constrained to one ideal type. Oftentimes when I talk to my clients, or just when I talk to women and friends in my life, and I see the way that they struggle with their own body image, or I see the way that they struggle to reconcile feeling beautiful, or won't even take the compliment, which is such a sore
Hard
spot.
thing. Yeah, you're like,
I'm like, please take the compliment. You are stunning. But it's not a look. Beauty and confidence isn't a look. It's a way of being. It's a way of existing. And you can tell when someone is really connected to and grounded in their body, because they just are happy to just exist and be and love in themselves.
There's the raised shoulders, the raised chest.
Yeah,
it's
they
not the
radiate.
hidden, and it's just, totally get that.
But it's not a look. It's not an image. But culture has done a really bloody good job of reinforcing that there is one way of being.
Yeah, and do you find as well, obviously, within different like countries?
Yes.
Like, because I'm thinking in Africa, like they've got the whole thing of beauty was a long neck, so the women would put the rings on their necks.
You'll still see in like Sudanese cultures or in certain African cultures where being more voluptuous, and by voluptuous I mean quite hefty, is still considered to be more beautiful.
Yep.
There was a study done actually in, I think it was Fiji, with the don't quote me on this, with the reintroduction, or sorry, the introduction of television and what that then did to the body standards in that country.
Interesting.
And at one point, before the introduction of media and film and television and all of those different things, they had one standard of beauty, or, you know, they didn't really care about how they presented within themselves. But through the introduction of media, body dysmorphia started to increase.
Wow.
And their negative association with themselves also worsened over time as well, which just goes to show again how pervasive that sort of commercialization of the body is. And the more that we're exposed to those negative elements, it can become really, really toxic. Really toxic.
Really? That's crazy, because that would have been quite a recent study, true. Like, if
This would have been like in the early 2000s actually. So not
that
super
long
recent, but not
ago,
long
like,
ago.
Yeah, that's really crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we've been chatting for 52 minutes. It literally feels like we've been talking for 10. I'm like,
That's
we
crazy.
just keep going? Like, are we going to just do a 2-hour episode? We're not going to. It's fine. But if there is one thing that throughout, how long do you have left till you complete your...
1.5 years.
So in 1.5 years' time, if you had to summarize what you hope to portray coming out of, like, if you had to write a conclusion for what you want your doctorate to say, what would that be? What do you think that would be? I mean, it's a year and a half away. It's going to probably change. You'll probably ebb and flow through different thought patterns or through different beliefs and all of these things. But what would you want it right now to be?
Right now, if I could also have something that is legible and understanding to the average person in the
So
normal
not me.
population.
I've already forgotten that word that you said before.
I would say...
Say it how you want, and then we can unpack it.
Okay. Well, I would say that the body is a vehicle for enjoyment and experience and life. Please treasure it. Please treat it with self-respect and compassion and love and admiration, because we don't have the time to spend wasting ourselves away, not building ourselves up, not empowering ourselves, not looking after ourselves, not putting ourselves first. Don't waste that time. Don't waste that opportunity. Give back to your body. It is such an essential vehicle for you to just experience the world. And if we don't lean into that and just happily exist and find ways to enjoy existing in the body, we will slowly see ourselves sink away. And from what I have seen in so much of the work that I've looked at and the text that I've analysed, you consistently see women being stripped away from their bodies, being disconnected in some shape or form. And what we consistently come back to is that if we can unite in one way, if we can find common ground within the body, if we can treat it with the respect and compassion and kindness that it deserves, we will be able to move through and find self-confidence and better self-esteem and satisfactory body standards. Like, all of those things come out of that relationship that we have with ourselves.
I have nothing to say.
Thanks.
Great conclusion.
Thank
I
you.
will cut that out and send that to you, and you can just add that in at the end of your doctorate. Just submit it when you send your last
Perfect.
everything.
A little video entry.
Mwah.
Thank you.
Signed, sealed, and delivered. I'm a doctor. No, but I totally agree with that. And it's like, the world is there to be explored. The world is there to be enjoyed. The world is there to be for you to be a part of. And it's not there as something to harm you or something to make life hard for you. It's there for you to actually want to be you and have every single thing that you want.
Our bodies are beautiful.
Yep.
Let's just lean into that.
Let's just stop focusing on them and just live, laugh, love. That could be your next little thing as well.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's the new title to my thesis.
I mean, if you want it, you can take it. What is the title to your thesis?
It's a gallery of wonderfully good bad girls.
Love.
Thank you.
Do you know what I'm picturing? Like
What?
the love heart with the flame.
Oh, nice. I like that one. That's a good vibe. Maybe I'll get that tattooed next.
I got it.
Do you actually? It's embedded in you.
Yeah.
I
you
love
can get
that.
Well, I think we'll wrap that up there. I think that was a really beautiful place to end this podcast. And I absolutely love talking to you. I absolutely love picking your
you.
brain and hearing your thoughts and just being really validated as someone who has struggled with body image and someone who has gone through all these different phases of life and phases of self-belief within myself and what I should be as a woman. It's definitely a really beautiful conversation to have had. And I think so many people are going to take so much from this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Corinne will be in our world again very, very, very soon. You can hear her talk some more, potentially in person if you want to come. But other than that, well, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.